began with the cooking of the great wings. 3 were eaten by the elves, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings, if I do say so myself. 7 by the dwarf lords, great miners and craftsmen of the mountain halls, forgetting for several consecutive decades to stop doing No Shave November. And 9 wings were gifted to the race of men who above all else desire delicious flavor. For within these wings is bound the spice and the salt to govern each race. But they were all of them deceived, for another wing was made. Deep in the land of Weebor, in the fires of Mount Tomb, Dark Lord Apron forged a master wing, and into this wing he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his cayenne pepper. 1 wing to rule them all.
Master Rolo, I ain't dropping no eaves, although I did drop that drumstick on the ground. I'd maybe brush that off before you munch down on that. All I'm saying is if we need to get that wing all the way up to Weebor, we best be going.
Salman Gamgee, you know I have to do this alone.
Of course you do, that's why I'm going with you.
I can't change your mind, can I?
Not likely, I've already committed to this whole bit.
Thank you, Sam.
Now, what about lunch?
What about lunch? All we have is that little crackery thing that the guy with the pointy ears, who looks a little bit like my dad, but my dad doesn't have pointy ears, gave us. And I already ate like 3 of those.
Don't you be fretting. All we need is some potatoes, a little broth, some vegetables, and baby, we got a stew going.
But can we make it without a recipe?
Well, sure, based on this foolproof recipe I've been given. You see, Mr. Rolo, the first thing we need for a good stew is the stuff that goes into it.
That makes sense.
Right, and in this case, we're taking some good old chicken thighs, since being a hobbit and all, I'm not a natural-born hunter, and chicken thighs are easier to get at the grocery store, and I'm too lazy to try and source rabbit meat. And have you priced it lately? Anyway, let's get some olive oil in, then add 4 chicken thighs skin on into a Dutch oven on high heat on our campfire or stove or whatever.
Way to keep it in the universe, Sam.
Thank you. We're going to salt and pepper them and give them good crisping just to get some color. We don't need to fully cook them just yet, just the color is all we're looking for. And leave the scrapings in the bottom of that pot. That's gold down there it is. While that's going, we're also going to prepare our veg. Thick cut carrots, because we want the hardiness of a vegetable that's not been finely diced. That's a traveler's food item, that is. Also celery, which can also be thick like a tree trunk, or the sunflowers that Mrs. Old Butterbury grows. You know the ones.
Sorry, I was too busy obsessing over this wing that guy with the beard who looks like my dad, except my dad doesn't have a beard, gave me, and told me I had to throw it in a volcano or something.
Quite you. Thick cut an onion and get it all into a container. We're also going to prep some greened beans and chop a garlic, but we don't want those to go in the same container yet. We're not quite ready for these veg. We got one more thing to deal with first.
What's that, Sam?
Potatoes. Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Now, here's the thing. Normally you just peel them and chop them like I'm doing here, then tossing them in as is after the stews are boiling and toiling away. But since this recipe calls for doing all of these, a fundamental misunderstanding of the initial quote, I might add, but that's okay, we take it as a challenge.
Sam, quit making meta jokes. They go over people's heads.
We're going to drop them into a pot of water and salt. Let it come to a boil, then cook for 15 minutes until nice and soft. Next we drain, and now for the real dumb part that's going to make a lot of people angry.
What are you doing, Sam?
I'm making a potato gnocchi's what I'm doing. It's the only way to meet the recipe's requirements of boiling, mashing, which I'm doing right now by the way, and sticking them in a stew. So with these pretty well mashed, I'm adding a lot of flour, which I did not measure, since I made a ton of potatoes for no good reason. Adding a few eggs as we go, some salt, and thoroughly mixing until it becomes smooth, like a real pasta dough. Next we're going to roll this out and chop it into individual little pasta pillows. Bet you'd like one of those about now, right, Mr. Rolo?
I've been sleeping on rocks and blanketing myself in dirt and moss for 3 months of hiking.
That's the spirit. Now these will cook fast, so we're flouring them and setting them aside for now while we...
Sam, I don't think I'll make it.
That's okay, Mr. Rolo. I'll carry you. Oh, you're heavier than you look, Mr. Rolo. How many of those cracker things you said you had?
Too many to count.
Well, Mr. Rolo, we got ourselves the right conditions for stewing, so let's turn the heat on our Dutch oven again. This time on low, till the fat from them thighs gets rolling again. Drop our veg in. That'll cook for 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll add our garlic and let it cook for another 2 minutes.
I'm so hungry.
Almost done, almost done. We just need to deglaze our pan with a quart of chicken stock and a glass of good old white wine. Then just toss our chicken thighs back in, top with a bay leaf or two, enough water to cover the chicken, then we lid and let it cook for a few hours till the chicken reads an internal temperature of 165 Fahrenheit.
A couple of hours?
Relax, time will fly by. Just sit and stare at that wing of yours. You'd like doing that. You do that for hours on end.
My precious.
Whoa, hangry alert. We got some time, so you want to debate with me in the audience about what constitutes a stew and if bay leaves actually do anything flavor-wise? Okay, never mind. Anyway, once these thighs are getting close to temperature, around 145 or so, it's time to toss in our green beans for another 15 minutes. When those chickens are up to temp completely, that's when you want to add your gnocchi. It'll cook for 2 to 5 minutes, then be done. And with that, it's time to serve. Now, that wasn't so hard to wait for, was it, Mr. Rollo? Well, I like it. Soft, tender, crunchy, hearty, boiled, mashed, stuck in a stew. All the greatest hits rolled into one.
I can't eat this, Sam.
I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't add gnocchi to a stew. But we did. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Rollo. The ones where we made carbonara in a way that Adelian chefs refused to accept. Those stories were full of darkness and danger, they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so many messes had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. Those were the meals that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too hungry to understand why. But I think, Mr. Rollo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of following the recipes, only they didn't. They kept winging it, because they were holding on to something.
What are we holding on to, Sam?
That there's some good food in the world, Mr. Rollo, and it's worth fighting for.